Hello everyone. Magic is glad to have you on this webinar on finance for startups and introduction to the business plan. We have Magic team over here along with the industry leaders and experts, board of directors and the core team. Hi, I'm Yogesh Tawde and I will be the driver for today's session. I would like to begin with a short presentation. Please have a look at it. Thank you for watching. The objective of today's expert session is to introduce you to the key concept of finance that are crucial for the startups and walk you through the basic of business plan. This is the first session in the series of two sessions. This will be followed by an advanced session on the same topic next month. I would like to introduce you to our guest speaker, Prasanna Pangam. Prasanna is a chartered accountant with over 15 years of experience. He has expertise in business process review, information system audit, transfer pricing advisory, project finance and consultancy. He is also certified public accountant and certified information system auditor from US. He is the partner at Palsole Pangam and has deep passion for the startup. Prasanna, I welcome you for this session and thank you for your time. I request you to kindly begin the session.
Thank you, Yogesh. Thank you for a nice introduction. First of all, I thank Magic for giving me this opportunity to share my views with the participants, and I'm really very happy, to address the budding entrepreneurs. I think some of them are already running the business, and some of them are likely to start their own business. Right? Am I right, Yogesh?
Yes, Prasanna.
Okay, great. So basically, so I will share my screen, and we will start with the presentation. Whether my voice is very, very much audible, there is no issue, right?
No, Prasanna. You can go
Okay.
ahead.
Whether my screen is
Yes.
visible?
Yes, Prasanna.
Okay, great. Maybe I will keep my video off so that there won't be any bandwidth issue. Yeah. So the topic what today we are covering is business plan basics and basics of financial statements. So as rightly mentioned by Yogesh, we will be having two sessions. So in today's session, I'm going to discuss with the business plan. What are the components of business plan? How we should prepare our business plan? What parameters we should consider while preparing our business plan? And we will start with basics of financial statements, in which we are going to deal with today the profit and loss statement and how to analyze profit and loss statement. We are going to actually see how to analyze a profit and loss statement taking a live example. Okay. So what is business plan? Basically, business plan is nothing but it's a blueprint. I will say it's a blueprint of our business, right? Which outlines the goals, what we want to achieve. And most important thing is it should not only document the goals, it should also document what are our plans, what are our steps to achieve those goals. So I have seen couple of business plans wherein people only talk about their top line, their turnover. So last year we have achieved 12 CR. This year we want to achieve 25 CR. And last year our profitability net profit was 10%. This year we want to achieve 20%. But only documenting these targets won't work unless you document how you are going to achieve it. So this business plan is very important, and it should document all these detailed steps, how you will achieve what you are planning to achieve, right? So now we are going to deal with what are those steps and how we should deal with those steps. So these are the broad ingredients of any business plan: market intelligence, product or market analysis, SWOT analysis, risk management, organization chart, capital expenditure, marketing strategies, and ultimately to prepare a projected P&L once we analyze all these various ingredients. Now we are going to deal with all these ingredients one by one. So first we will start with market intelligence. So what is market intelligence? So basically, if you are already running a business, you are having some turnover, or maybe you are starting a new business. So you need to work on all these various parameters under market intelligence. So first is geography. So example, now many of you might be based in Maharashtra. So maybe you will start with Maharashtra only to start your business or to approach the prospective customers. But typically your business plan should document that which geography you are going to cater, right? So maybe initially you will start with Maharashtra, but slowly you will move to other states or maybe you might plan to go global, right? So this is one of the key aspect which we should deal with. Next is product family. So what products you are going to offer? So typically, let's take an example that you are starting a company or a venture wherein you are going to manufacture auto components for say Mahindra and Mahindra, or for Bajaj, since many of you might be in Aurangabad. So let's take example of Bajaj. So again, what product family you are going to offer? So maybe clutch parts, maybe brake items, maybe seat and other related items. So that product family has to be defined properly, which will go in sync with your business plan. End product. the product which you are offering, is it end product for the customer or is it going to be a consumable for the customer? So that is also going to play a key role in your overall business plan preparation, because if it is going to be a consumable for your customer, ultimately your performance or your business growth will depend on the growth of your customer. So you will always have to keep track of the growth and performance of your customer as well. If your product is not an end product and it is not consumed by the end customer, but it's a consumable for your customer, right? So typically, if I'm manufacturing auto components, if auto industry is going to get affected because of some reason, naturally I'm going to have that impact on my business as well. So this aspect has to be dealt with very properly. Or maybe then you will have to have product family in such a way that some products are consumables and some products might be end products or finished products, which will be consumed directly, so that your reliance on one particular industry or sector is reduced. So that, and last point is with respect to that whatever products I'm manufacturing, whether I'm relying only on one sector, if I'm relying on only one sector, any ups and downs faced by that particular industry or that particular sector is going to have same impact on my business as well. So maybe when you are preparing business plan, we will have to look at these aspects as well, that whether my product can be utilized by multiple industries or can be utilized in different sectors, so that even if there is some up and downs in one sector, my business may not get affected because I am supplying to another sector as well, which is booming. So say in today's scenario, if I am supplying to auto sector and also to say medical sector, so maybe my auto sector might be not doing good, but my medical sector is say flourishing, right? So ultimately I will have a less impact on my overall business. So this is nothing but market intelligence. This is very important matrix which we all need to deal with properly. So product market matrix, right? So there are 4 quadrants in it. So we all should analyze our business or the proposed business with respect to these 4 quadrants. So first we will start with, if I am already running a business, the first quadrant is a important quadrant for me, which wherein I'm offering my existing product and I have an existing customer base, right? So I'm having a decent business which is going on. Say example, auto components I'm doing with Bajaj. So what comes under market penetration? So today I'm say giving 1000 units of a particular component to Bajaj Auto. Whether I can increase that share, right? From 1 lakh components per month, whether I can increase it to 1.5, 2 lakh components per month. So this will come under existing product, existing market, right? Next will come existing product and new market, right? So here maybe the product is same, the same auto components, but whether I can have another customer on board, right? Who is also who also has a similar requirement of those components. So that will come under existing product and new market. Or even right now, as we initially discussed, that I am right now supplying only in Maharashtra, whether I can go outside Maharashtra and identify new customers outside Maharashtra. So typically, again, just to share with you, earlier when we were in VAT regime, the problem was that whenever we want to do business in any other another state, we have to take registration, local VAT registration, and all states were having different VAT acts and VAT policies, procedures, guidelines. So it was a huge hurdle, or and it was very difficult to maintain all those local compliances and following those local compliances. But since GST has been introduced, now it's very easy. Sitting in Maharashtra also, you can sell your product outside Maharashtra charging IGST. So now going outside your geography has become simple. So in second quadrant, you will have existing product and new market. Now third important quadrant, this has to be a conscious decision whether we want to go for this particular quadrant or not, wherein we are going to develop new product and we will offer it to existing customers. So if we take same example, so right now say I am manufacturing say silencer parts for my Bajaj auto. whether I can, offer some other products related to two-wheelers to Bajaj Auto, whether I can do some new product development. So that will come under new product, but existing customer. So customer is same, but we are trying to get more business from the same customer for new product. Here, this aspect has to be dealt with properly because we might have to do some investment in capital plant and machinery. Might have to buy a new plant and machinery setup because the new product might require some different kind of machineries, or we might have to invest in R&D as well, right? So that's why this decision is very important, whether we really want to go for new product development and offer our existing customer. And fourth, which is since pandemic, we have come across so many inquiries from our existing clients as well, wherein their existing business is not doing good and they are looking for a total diversifications, wherein they are going to enter into a total different product domain, wherein the product is also different, the market is also different. So just to give you an example that since pandemic, the tourism industry has been badly affected, the hospitality industry has been badly affected. So many of our clients from these industries are looking for a complete diversification. So this has to be a very thoughtful process because it has a lot of issues. You have to deal with lot of new things which you have not done earlier. You need to have that expertise or you need to develop that expertise. So this is a fourth quadrant which will again dependent on your existing business, your existing financial strength. Based on that, you can take a decision whether to go for a complete diversification. But this product market matrix is very critical when you want to prepare a robust business plan. And very important, SWOT analysis, right? You all might have heard about it, read about it, you might have done an exercise also, but this is also very important to do a SWOT analysis of your existing business or also proposed business. So what are the strengths of your existing business, the existing customer base, what you have, why they are with you for, say, you are running a business for, say, last 5-10 years. So why the customers are loyal to you? So that those are nothing but your strengths. What are your weaknesses? This is very important. If we can find out our business weaknesses properly, that will help us to work on those weaknesses and come up with a proper plan to have a very prospective business ahead, right? So strengths, weaknesses are almost opportunities and threats. So we all know that after pandemic, the situation had changed, the business scenario had changed, the way business has business is done had changed. We are now doing a lot of things the way we are right now doing this particular session remotely. A lot of things are happening online, the businesses are happening online. So this has created an opportunity for many businesses as well, right? The entire gamut of business has changed a lot after the COVID pandemic. So you need to do this SWOT analysis looking at the present scenario and future scenario as well. So we don't know the way the predictions are that this situation may continue for next 2 to 5 years as well. So in that scenario, how you should deal with your business, how you should maintain your business, how you should perform your business. So all this will come under this SWOT analysis, right? Risk management, this is very important. So I'm just going to show you one slide which will give you a lot of inputs, right? So what are the risks and how we should manage that risk? So if we can see on the top, the camera, right? If you all recollect, earlier Kodak was the monopolist manufacturer of cameras, right? We used to call it also Kodak movement, right? But now Kodak is out of business. Why? Because the technology has changed and they couldn't cope up with that technology change, and now we have smartphones in such a way that slowly even we hardly purchase a separate camera unless we want to have some interest in photography and all, then only we go for a separate camera. Otherwise now our smartphones are so good that they have a very high quality resolution cameras, right? Similarly, all these cars, Ambassador, Fiat, those are the old cars. Now they have been changed. The technology has been changed. Now we are slowly going to a driverless car as well. So this is nothing but the change which is happening every day, and which is, changing the dynamics of the business. So we all need to analyze all these dynamics with respect to our business as well, right? Ola, the biggest example of the car aggregator, right? It is the biggest company which is not owning a single car, right? So they have changed the market dynamics. Now people in metro cities prefer to hire the car instead of owning a car, right? So these, it has changed the dynamics, the mindset of people, right? So these all aspects needs to be considered when you are analyzing your business, when you are preparing your business plan, that what risk your business may have today, tomorrow, and going forward. So typically in risk management, what are the aspects? First, you will have to identify the risk. So typically, if I talk about, say, auto industry, what is the biggest risk right now auto industry is having? It is going under a big transformation, that slowly we are moving from petrol, diesel vehicles to electric vehicles, right? So there are a lot of units which are right now providing, say, manufacturing components for these big giants like Mahindra and Mahindra, or even Bajaj Auto. But now those who are manufacturing those components for diesel and petrol vehicles, unless and until they also shift to manufacturing of electric vehicle components, they will be thrown out of business, right? Maybe in 5 to 10 years, their business will slowly go down, and at some point in time, they will not have any business, right? So this is nothing but identification of risk. Once you identify the risk, you have to assess the risk, that what is the impact this risk will have on my business, right? How long I can sustain with this risk, right? And third aspect is how to control the risk. So what are the control mechanisms? So either you compensate with some other products, right, which are not having those risk components, or you can totally change your business the way we discuss in the product matrix, product market matrix. You can totally change your product portfolio, you can completely change your market, or you may totally diversify into a new business where there is a lot of potential. And finally, whatever these measures you have taken, you need to review those measures at periodic intervals. So typically when you do this risk management, you will have to do the analysis of what will be the impact of that risk and what is the probability of that risk. So if there is a high impact and high probability, you have to target and address that risk immediately. But if the probability is low, and even if it is going to have a low impact, you can keep that particular risk, or you can sustain that risk and still continue with your business. So this is very important aspect of risk management: identifying the risk, assessing the risk, what impact it will have, identifying the measures to control the risk, and finally reviewing those controls at periodic intervals. Now this is a typical risk template which can be prepared. So wherein you identify the risk, whether it is external risk or internal risk, what are the chances of its occurrence, what is the impact it will have, whether it's high, medium, low, what is a proposed plan of mitigation, who the person who is responsible in an organization who is going to deal with this particular risk, and what is the time frame to address the risk, right? So this is just an example of a risk template which can be prepared for your business. This is very important. Marketing strategies, right? So whenever you are entering into a business, you need to market your product. The product which you are offering or might be already in the market, you might have a lot of competition, but still you want to penetrate that market because you know that that product has got a lot of potential. So you need to market it well, so that even if there are competitors, even if there are other players who are already established in the market, still you can get a good chunk of the business, right? So you need to define a robust marketing strategy. So in that, what will come, that how you will generate inquiries, whether you will have a marketing team, whether you will have a very strong social networking platform wherein you will do a lot of advertisement and online publishing. Product basket offering. So sometimes if you offer one product along with another product which is complementary to that, maybe your product may sell well, right? Price differentiation. So typically, if you really want to disrupt a market, what you need to do, you need to slash your prices, right? We have seen the way Reliance has been entering in various sectors. What they are doing, they are totally entering into that particular segment in such a way that they become a price differentiator, and then slowly they start increasing the price, right? The way we see the Reliance Jio, the way they have entered this mobile sector, right? They initially started with giving us free data and very low plans, very low pricing plans, and now as they have established in the market, now they are again coming back with all the other competitors, right? So this is nothing but one of the strategy of price differentiation. Regional marketing team, typically in our country where there is a language differences, there is a caste differences. So if you have a local marketing team, maybe dealing in a local language, maybe it helps to connect well with the people, and typically getting business may become easy. So you might think of having some regional marketing team for your business. Strategic collaboration. So especially this pandemic has created a lot of opportunities for India to go global, to have global partnerships. So you can have such strategic collaborations, and which could be one of your business plan goal, wherein you want to do some joint venture with a foreign company and get some foreign business share. So these all are the various aspects of marketing strategies, how you should market your product, how should approach the market locally or even globally. Organization structure, this is very important, right? You need to have a very strong organization structure, right? If you want to run business successfully, you should have a team, right? It's a teamwork. A single person can't run a big company or a very successful company. At small level, you may be able to manage your business, but as you grow, as you scale your business, you need to have a strong organization structure. So I will always recommend our clients that whenever you prepare a business plan, you should prepare a detailed organization structure. You may not be having all those places filled in, right? But at least you should provide for that particular profile or that particular position in your organization. And also you should put some targets. So say today I am at say 10 CR of turnover. Whenever I'm going to touch 50 CR of turnover, I'm going to have a separate CEO in my company, right? So all such turnover based or other criteria based targets should be put, but then your organization structure should be robust to really deal with the requirement of the business. Because if you really want to scale up your business, you need to have a strong teamwork. You need to departmentalize your business operations so that each person can focus on their role and really perform well. And if individual department performs well, ultimately it helps the organization or the company to perform well and grow to that extent. So this is a typical organization structure for a manufacturing company, sample I have prepared. Similarly, if you are into service industry, your structure may change, but then you should have this structure on paper and identifying the present positions which are already occupied, and also highlighting those positions which are not yet occupied, but at periodic intervals you are going to occupy those positions. Expenditure types, this is very important. Typically we see that whenever we talk about business plan, people only talk about the top line, that I want to achieve this turnover, right? But it is also very important that you also discuss about your expenditure, right? Because ultimately why we are doing business, we are doing business to earn profit. And if we are not going to get a sizable profit from our business, it's of no use, right? If my business is not generating minimum profit, say there are expectations, right, that I want to earn 15% profit at the end of the day. If I'm not going to earn that, means what? That my plan, my goals are not fulfilled. If my profitability is even below than what rate of interest offered by banks on fixed deposit, it is better to close the business and keep my funds in bank deposits, right? So why we all are doing business? Because we want to earn profits, we want to generate income for ourselves, right? Because we are taking risk to run the business. So typically it is very important that we need to work on the expenditure as well, because ultimately if we manage our expenditure properly, we will be able to generate profit. Otherwise, we may increase our sales, 10 times, but ultimately if we are not able to control our expenditure, we won't have profit at the end of the day, right? So in expenditure, there are two types. One is recurrent and one is capital. Capital is nothing but a one-time expenditure to set up your business, right? So wherein, buying a land, putting up a factory shed, putting up a lot of machineries, other infrastructure, that everything will come under capital. And recurrent is nothing but your day-to-day operating expenses, wherein you will pay wages to your workers, salary to your staff, electricity expenses, other operating expenses, that all will come under recurrent. So whenever you are working on a business plan, you also should work on the expenditure side of the business plan as well. Capital expenditure planning, as I mentioned, this is very critical when you are setting up a new business, or when you are going for an expansion of an existing business. You need to identify what are your capital requirements. You should identify what nature of assets you propose to purchase. Here, typically, I will share a practical example. Hello. Yeah. Whenever any businessman is starting a new business, what we have observed, he is very enthusiastic, and they put up very huge investment in capex. So say right now, whatever orders they have in hand, say example, it's 1 ton per day, but they put up a plant and machinery which is having capacity of 100 ton processing per day. Is it really required to put on day one, right? Because what is going to happen, if you are going to invest heavily at initial stages, it is going to have very huge impact on your servicing, right? Because heavy machinery will consume more electricity, and if the machinery is not utilized properly, the underutilization will ultimately going to add to your expenditure. So it is very important that whenever you want to start a new business, you identify your initial requirements, start at a small level, and as you grow, as you settle in business, then you go for expansion. So that's why this capital expenditure planning is very important. And this is how you will prepare a profit and loss statement. So once you work on various aspects, as we discussed earlier, ultimately end result is to have a 5 years plan of your business, that what will be your top line, what revenue will earn, what growth you are expecting. So this is typically a tentative profit and loss statement for manufacturing company. So where you will work on the key drivers. So raw material is a key driver for any manufacturing company. There might be some job work outsourcing you are doing, so that job work charges is a heavy cost item for you. Employee cost, right? Then your electricity consumption, other repairs, maintenance. So this is how you will prepare your profit and loss statement, and you will arrive at a PAT, that is nothing but profit after tax. What profit you want to take home from your business, that is nothing but PAT. So this will give you overall idea about how you propose to do your business, how you propose to achieve your financial targets. So just to conclude our business plan discussion, so these are some sample steps which I have noted down, which typically you need to work upon whenever you are working on your business plan. So first is, if you are already running some enterprise resource planning ERP software you are already running, you need to revisit whether that ERP is sufficient to run the existing business, or the scalability or growth what we are looking at, whether it is really robust, or whether you need to go for a new ERP. So because that is going to increase your capital expenditure, you will have to invest in a new ERP. Bring in professionals. So the way we discussed, that whenever you have a robust organization chart, you can identify that these are the positions in my company which right now are empty, but I need to fill in at appropriate levels. So that particular org chart will help you to identify the requirements of your business. Because I can share with you, practically we have experienced that many of our customer clients, they initially started on their own, and as they have grown, they felt that they are doing it single-handedly, so there is no need to have some professionals on board. But at certain point in time, it becomes a stagnancy. You are not able to grow your business, because you are alone handling lot of functions and you are not able to devote time or justice to that particular function. So that's why you need to have professionals in your company if you really want to scale your business at appropriate time and appropriate levels. Change in external auditors, this is also very important. So typically chartered accountants who are working as a statutory auditor for your company, as a recommendation, it is recommended that you should change your auditors, because every new chartered accountant may give you some different perspective, different inputs, which will ultimately help to grow your business, to have some different dimensions to your business. Internal audit, yes, it's also very important that you should have an internal audit as a function in your company, so that your financial statements or your books of accounts, your internal documentation will get reviewed independently, and that will also help you to maintain your business records properly, and indirectly it will also add to your business growth. Retain and nurture talent through robust HR practices. So HR is also very critical function, because ultimately we are going to deal with human beings, and if we have proper HR practices in your business, that will help to maintain and retain talents in your company, and ultimately that is going to help us to grow. Best infrastructure, so we should have good facilities, the plant and machinery what we are using to manufacture our products, if they are of good quality, naturally the product what we are going to manufacture is going to be a high quality product. Independent directors, again, this is also very important. If you are running a company and if you have a professional people who are from, say, our same industry, having good experience of the industry, if we hire them as an independent director, their contribution, their views, their experiences will help us to grow our business. Again, HR as a business partner. So HR function is very critical. Most of the times we have seen that it is a neglected function. There is no separate HR function in the company, but this is very important, because ultimately we need to manage people well, and if we do that, that will help the business. And we should have some quality certifications, like having the standard operating procedures, ISO 27000 or ISO 9001 certifications, or if we are dealing with a particular industry, ISO of that particular industry can be obtained. Multi-banking facility. So typically, if we are dealing with banks, if we have availed any finances or loans from banks, then we should have a multi-banking facility, so that we can get more exposure to different banks, more different financial products can be offered by them, and ultimately that will also help us for our business scalability. So this ends with the discussion on financial statements. Yogesh, should we continue, or we should take any questions right now on the business plan?
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, are there any questions?
Prasanna, can we take it the last?
Okay, fine. I will do that. No issues. Yeah.
Great.
So fine. So we have concluded our discussion on business plan. So now we will move to financial statements. So this is very important. I understand that most of the participants are non-commerce background participants. So so I'm going to deal with in a very so I will start with the basic principles of accounting in this, and then slowly we will go to financial statements. So these are the, now since I'm practicing in project finance for last more than 15 years, these are the typical questions what we have observed from any entrepreneur or businessman whenever we meet them. So I am just starting my discussion on financial statement with some of those sample questions. So one of them is that I am into business for 10 years now. I have not yet availed a single rupee loan. So that gentleman has done business for last 10 years, putting his own margin or introducing his own funds. He has not availed a single rupee loan. Now he's going for expansion. So now the business is settled and now he's looking for some growth. So now he wants to go for a bank loan or bank funding. But now bank is not ready to lend. Why? Okay, let's discuss. Or I approach a bank for working capital limit. We are going to discuss this in detail. So working capital limit is nothing but a limit which is offered by a bank for my day-to-day operations to run my business, right? So I approached bank for this facility, but bank informed me that your balance sheet is not permitting us to provide you working capital limit. Why so? So there are some aspects of balance sheet which needs to be taken care of, which this gentleman has not looked into, or maybe he is not made aware about that. I want to apply for some government tenders. However, my net worth is not sufficient to be eligible to apply. Now, net worth is one aspect of the financial statement. Whenever you are applying for government tender, uh, uh, there are certain criteria. So, net worth is one of the criteria. Again, we will discuss in detail during our further discussions. So, if your net worth is not good, you may not be eligible for government tenders. Or my business has a very strong profitability record, still it is always in cash current. This is a typical scenario we have observed in most of the businesses. That on, if we look at the profit and loss statement, the business is doing good. They are having 10%, 15% profitability, but the business is always in liquidity crunch. Today I have got a new order, but I am not having sufficient funds to procure the raw material, so I am not able to cater that order. This particular scenario is faced by many businessmen, so we are going to deal with this as well. These are all practical experiences, and I'm going to share all with you all that how to deal with these experiences, and you should not face these scenarios whenever you are going to start your business, right? So if we are facing all such kind of uh, issues or experiences, then definitely what is required that we need to review our balance sheet and need to make some improvements in our balance sheet, or we call it strengthening of your balance sheet. So now, as I mentioned, I am just a few slides. I am just dealing some basic concepts of accounting. So typically, whenever we talk about financial statements, the basis of financial statements is accounting, right? The way you account for your business transactions, that is really very important. And that's how we need to go ahead, right? So, what is accounting? It is nothing but the art of recording, classifying, or summarizing your transactions for the preparation of financial statements. So, how you account for your business transactions, that is really very important, right? So, there are various requirements. Why we do business accounting? Because unless and until we do accounting of our business transactions, we will not come to know how well we are performing in your business, what are our dues or recoveries from our customers, what is the position of our business, whether we are in positive position or we are in negative position. So all this will depend on how the accounting is done. There are two bases of accounting which is followed in India. So one is cash basis and one is accrual basis. Practically now cash basis has almost stopped. It is generally used only in NGOs or not for profit organizations. Now all companies, even now, since you are all going to have a startup, so startup will be typically a limited liability partnership firm or a private limited company. So you will have to follow accrual basis of accounting. That means whenever you enter into a transaction, you have to account for it. Though you have not paid or received money, but you have entered into a business transaction, you have to account for it. This is nothing but an accrual basis of accounting. So there are the three rules which are followed. So you take any software, be it SAP, be it Tally, which is widely used for accounting purpose, any accounting software, these are the basic rules of accounting which are followed. I'm not going to deal with all this. Just this is the overall overview that how the accounting start, what are the principles of accounting. And the main principle of accounting which is followed in India is double entry bookkeeping system. Means what? That whatever transactions we do, it has two effects. One is debit effect and one is credit effect. And if those both the effects are not accounted for properly, it is going to create problem. It is going to have wrong financial position reflected in your financial statements. So that's why it is very important that your accounting should be proper, your accounting should be accurate. So the financial statements which will get generated based on the accounting will be accurate and perfect. So what are the financial statements? These are nothing but the indicators of your business position. Which position, whether the business is doing good, business is successful, or business is not doing good, or it is into losses. So there are three main financial statements. So whenever we talk about financial statement, here are these three main statements: profit and loss, balance sheet, and cash flow statement, right? So now we are going to deal with each and every statement in detail. So in today's session, we are going to cover profit and loss statement and how you should analyze profit and loss statement. So this will also help to analyze your own profit and loss statement as well. So typically I want to share one scenario that whenever we have a client meeting for project finance, and if we ask some basic questions about their financial statements, we may get, or we are likely to get an answer from the client that, this is done by my CA, I don't know about this. But typically this argument is not acceptable, right? Though your chartered accountant is preparing your financial statements, it's your business, right? It's your baby. So you should know that how my business is reflected on paper. Because ultimately, though you are doing very good business, though you are performing well, if it is not presented properly on paper, it is going to have a lot of impact. So what impact? So typically, since I'm addressing startup entrepreneurs here, you all guys are going to approach, say, some investors, right? So whenever you have your startup registered and you are through with your initial incubation process and your idea is now ready for commercial exploitation, you may approach some investors, or even at initial stages when you want to develop your idea or work on your idea, or do some R&D, you will approach some investors. So who are investors? Investors are nothing but the stakeholders in your business, right? What do you mean by stakeholders? They are going to invest in your business, and as a owner of the business, we are responsible to that investor, right? We are responsible to that stakeholder. So typically, financial statements is the face, or is the mirror of our business, which is presented in front of all these stakeholders. So be it investors, be it our bankers, be it our suppliers, be it our customers, even our employees, right? So these are all the face of our business to all these stakeholders. So that's why it is very important that we prepare our financial statements diligently, and our financial statements reflect true and fair picture of our business. So that's why it is very critical that we should also know the broad aspects or broad parameters of our financial statements. I will not expect that as a owner of the business you should know how much GST liability I am having month on month, or how much GST input credit I am availing. These are all technical aspects which will be taken care by your CA or your accounting team. But as a business owner, you should know that what turnover I have achieved, what is my gross profit, what is my net profit, what is my overall balance sheet position, whether my current ratio is good. We are going to deal with this in detail, whether my current ratio is good, whether my debt equity ratio is proper, right? So ultimately, whether my balance sheet or whether my financial statements are bankable. What do you mean by bankable? That if I approach my bank, whether bank will be ready to lend me, or if I approach any investor, whether that investor would be interested to invest in my business. At least as a owner, we should have this understanding, and we should have that much knowledge of our financial statement. So that's why it is very important that though you are an engineer, you are a technical person, you should know these some of the key aspects from the financial angle about your business. Now, typically, so as we already discussed, why to use financial statements? We want to track the progress of our business. Important. There are a lot of compliances from financial as well as non-financial angle we have to do. So typically now we are working with couple of startups. So typically we need to submit a quarterly progress report to the investors. So unless and until I do my accounting properly, unless and until I prepare my financial statements properly, I won't be able to present that quarterly report to the investor, right? So that's why it is very important to maintain our accounting properly and to maintain periodical financial statements properly. Better debt management. What is debt? Debt is nothing but the borrowings, right? So ultimately the investor funds is what? It is a borrowing for me. It is a borrowed funds for me. Someday or the other, I'm going to return that money back to the investor. Now, sometimes in case of startup, it may happen that some initial investment is not to be refunded, but ultimately, unless and until I use those funds diligently, I'm not going to get further funds, right? Because the next investor is going to look at how diligently I have used the funds invested earlier by first investor. So debt management is very important, and that is possible when we use these financial statements properly. Identify trends. This is very important. I can identify the business trends, how my business is growing year on year or period by period. So if I prepare my financial statements in one particular manner, I can compare my business performance vis-a-vis last year's, right? Last few previous years. What is a growth? What is a trend? Which product is doing good? Which product is not doing good? So all these trends I will be able to identify using or analyzing my financial statements. Managing liabilities. Liabilities is nothing but my business dues. So how diligently I should manage my liabilities. Comparison with competitor. This is very important, right? So the way financial statements are prepared by me for my business, my competitors are also doing that. So I can get some competitors' financial statements from public domain. So from Register of Companies ROC's website, I can download some of such financial statements of my competitors, and I can analyze that how they have performed, the way I have grown, whether they have grown in the similar way or whether they have grown more at a higher pace. So how they managed to do that. If my profitability is 10% and my competitors' profitability is 15%, why so? How they manage to achieve a 5% higher profitability. So these all analysis can be done if I can do an analysis of financial statements. Comparison with industry. So again, taking the same example, say auto industry. So how overall auto industry has been performing. If the industry is down performing, naturally it is going to have impact on my business as well, because I am also part of that industry. So industry analysis or industry comparison also becomes easy if we prepare financial statements properly. Now I'm going to show you actual profit and loss statement. Is this visible?
Yes,
Is
Prasanna.
this visible?
Yes, Prasanna.
Yes, Prasanna.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a typical profit and loss statement of one of our clients. So for confidentiality purpose, I have removed the name. So this particular company is into manufacturing of auto components. So this is a typical profit and loss statement for the year ended 31st March 2019. Now it is very important. Whenever we talk about profit and loss, it is prepared for a period. So whenever we are doing regulatory or tax compliances, we prepare this profit and loss for a year, for 12 months period. So this particular statement is prepared from 1st April 18 to 31st March 19. So this is prepared for this 12 months period. And there is also comparative P&L prepared parallelly for 31st March 18. Now this company is into manufacturing of auto components. So if we really look at it, briefly I will run through this statement. So it did a turnover of 2 crore 39 lakhs in 31st March 18, and the turnover in 19 was 5 crore 53 lakhs, right? Almost more than 100% jump. Other income is say some interest income or FD, or there is some mutual fund investment, so maybe dividend on that mutual fund investment. Or if I have availed some subsidy, there are a lot of state subsidies available for manufacturing industries. So if I have availed some subsidies from DIC, so that income will come under other income. Now, since it's a manufacturing company, what is the main cost driver? The main cost driver is raw material, right? So that's why this is the first major cost item which is reflected, right? So material consumed is nothing but a raw material consumed to manufacture that particular auto component. Finance cost will cover if you are availing some term loan, or if you are availing some working capital facility from bank, whatever interest you have paid, that will come under finance cost. Now it is very important to understand this concept, direct expenses. Now there are direct expenses and indirect expenses. What is the difference? Direct expenses is nothing but the expenses which are required to manufacture the product which I am selling to the customer, which are directly involved. So if those expenses are not incurred, my product will not get manufactured. All those expenses are direct expenses. Example, so I am running a unit. The workers who are working at the shop floor on the machines, whatever wages I am paying to them is a direct expense, because unless and until my workers work on the machine, my auto component which I am selling to Mahindra or say to Bajaj Auto will not get manufactured. Electricity expenses, right? Unless until I have I consume electricity, my machines will not work. So electricity expenses will come under that. If I'm also using some other fuel like gas, diesel, all those consumables will also come under direct expenses. So all such expenses which are required to manufacture my product will come under direct expenses. And other than direct, all other expenses are indirect expenses. Like my office staff, the accountant who is doing a day-to-day accounting, right, of my bills, of my vouchers, that service is required, right? But if even if one day accountant doesn't come, whether it will affect my production? No, the production will go on, but still this service is required. The marketing guy who is doing the marketing for my product and getting me new business, whether he is directly related to production activity? No, but that service is required. Plant and printing and stationery, the whatever printer, other facility I am having for printing my various documents, that is also one of the expense, but that all will come under indirect expenses. Now this is very important. Depreciation, this particular concept is very important, and everybody should understand this concept. What is depreciation? Depreciation is nothing but a notional expenditure. This 27,73,552 is not actually expended by the company, right? Though I have claimed it as an expenditure, this particular depreciation is not an expense for the company. But then why it is claimed here? So this is we need to understand. So today, say I have invested 1 CR in plant and machinery, right? And that particular machinery is having a useful life of 10 years. Means what? So at the end of 10 years, I have to replace that machinery, right? I will have to again buy a new machinery. And at the end of 10 years, the price of that machinery may not be 1 CR, it may be 1.5 CR. So should I again invest 1.5 CR at the end of 10 years? No, you should not do that. That's why the accounting principle what we are following in India has given us an opportunity that whatever machinery you are using for your manufacturing, what is happening? There is a wear and tear happening, right? As I am using that machinery to manufacture my products which I am selling, slowly year on year, the life of that machinery is getting reduced, right? So the accounting methodology what we are adopting has given us an opportunity that whatever wear and tear happening to your plant and machinery, you claim that as an expenditure, which is a notional expenditure, right? So just to give you an example, that 1 CR I have invested in 2021 in a new plant and machinery. Now the life of that machinery is 10 years. What I will do? Every year I will claim 10 lakhs as depreciation in my profit and loss account. What will happen? This 10 lakhs, which is actually a notional expenditure, whether I have paid 10 lakhs to anybody? No. When I am talking about material, I have paid this 4 crore 4 lakhs to my material supplier, right? When I am talking about finance cost, I have actually paid 16 lakh 20,000 to banks for giving me the financial facilities. When I'm talking about direct expenses, I have actually paid wages to my workers who are working on my machines. But when I'm talking about depreciation, I have not paid any rupee to anybody, right? It is a notional expenditure. But what has happened? Because I have managed to claim this as a depreciation, as an expense, I have saved this much amount, right? I have not given this amount to anybody. I have not paid this amount to anybody, but I can have a provision to keep this 27 lakhs aside. Why? Why I want to keep this 27 lakh aside? Because whenever after the useful life of my existing machine gets over, I will be able to use this 27 lakh 73,000, which is accumulated every year, to buy my new machine, right? So this is a facility given by our present financial statement structure to take depreciation as a notional expenditure every year, so that whenever you want to replace your machine, you need not again infuse that much funds. The basic funds, so taking the same example, that my 1 CR machinery is costing 1.5 CR after 10 years, what will happen? That 1 CR is already I am having accumulated in my financials in the form of depreciation claimed every year. So I will have to only manage additional 50 lakhs to purchase my new machinery at the end of 10 years. So this is a benefit of claiming depreciation, right? I hope this concept is clear. Let me know if you want to repeat this. So typically depreciation is the only expenditure in my profit and loss business which is a non-cash expenditure. Actually, no cash has been expended from the pocket, but however I am claiming this as an expenditure. You got the point? I explained the rationale for claiming this depreciation in books. If there is any doubts, let me know, because this is very important. So this is a notional expenditure. I'm claiming depreciation. Ultimately, I'm arriving at profit, right? So this is profit before tax. Then I'm going to pay some income tax as per the rates applicable to me. So if I'm individual, there are different rates applicable. If I'm a partnership firm, different income tax rates applicable. Since it's a company has got a different tax structure. And ultimately, this is a profit. This is nothing but a take-home profit, which I can take home. Practically, in case of company, you can't directly withdraw the profit as it is. You will have to declare dividend and take that profit in the form of dividend, right? So this is typically a structure of a profit and loss statement, which is presented. Whenever you are going to start your business, your chartered accountant will prepare a similar balance sheet, similar profit and loss statement for your business. Okay. So now we are going to analyze this, right? In subsequent slides, I have shown how to analyze this profit and loss statement now. Okay, so these are the various terms which we right now discuss while going through the profit and loss statement. Now, only one particular point which was not discussed here, gross profit. What is gross profit and what is net profit? You all need to understand, because again, this is a term which is used whenever you are discussing about your financial statements or your competitors' financial statements. So gross profit, or we call it Dhobhar Nafa, right? What is gross profit? Basically, whatever turnover or sales you have done minus your direct expenses, right? These direct expenses. What are direct expenses? I explained to you. Expenses which are incurred related to your production are direct expenses. So whatever turnover you have achieved minus direct expenses will give you gross profit, right? And whenever from this gross profit, you reduce all your indirect expenses, expenses which are not directly related to your manufacturing activity, but still they are required, right? As we discussed, salaries of accountant, salary of marketing staff, rent for your premises, right? Interest on bank loans, insurance of your facilities, right? So all these are indirect expenses which are also required. You will reduce that, and then you will arrive at net profit. In net profit also, there are these various parameters which are again typically discussed by investors. So that's why I have taken specifically these terminologies here, because whenever you are going to approach any investor, he will ask, what is your EBITDA, right? So this first EBITDA, it is called as EBITDA. So what is the EBITDA of your business you have proposed? This typical question asked by any investor. So EBITDA is nothing but operating profit. Whatever operations, whatever product manufacturing and selling you are going to do, what is the operating profit from your business? This is nothing but EBITDA margin. So how you calculate EBITDA? EBITDA is nothing but earning before interest, tax, and depreciation amortization. Means what? Whatever profit you have earned. When you arrive at your profit, you have already reduced the depreciation, right? We already discussed what is depreciation. It is a notional expenditure, right? It is not an actual expenditure. So that's why whenever you want to calculate your operating profit, we add back depreciation. What is interest? Interest is not operating cost, right? It is not required to run your operations. If I don't avail any bank loan, whether I'm going to pay any interest? No. Because I'm not having my own funds, I have availed some financial assistance from bank. So that's why I have paid interest to bank. If I wouldn't have availed any bank loan, I wouldn't have paid any interest, right? So that's why interest is also not considered as operating cost. Operating cost purely means cost which is required to run the operations of your business. So that's why interest is also added back, and tax is ultimately paid to the government on our profits, right? So that's why tax is also added back. So whenever you add back interest, tax and depreciation to your net profit, you arrive at EBITDA, or nothing but a operating profit. So typically any investor, any stakeholder would like to look at your EBITDA margin. What is your EBITDA? How well you have performed with vis-a-vis your competitors, whether your EBITDA is high, vis-a-vis your industry, whether your EBITDA is high. So all these aspects will be looked into by any investor, any stakeholder, to decide whether to invest in your business or not, right? Now we are going to analyze the profit and loss statement. So typically, whenever you want to analyze profit and loss statement, what do you need to do? You need to compare current year figures with last year figures. This is very important. The way we have right now seen the P&L, there is a comparative figures put in, right, for 2019 March and 2018 March. Identify main cost drivers and track them. So in our case, what are the main cost drivers we have seen? Raw material is a main cost driver, and direct expenses, especially wages, because ours is a manufacturing activity. So our main cost drivers are raw material and workers payments. Calculate key ratios and analyze for variance. So now we are going to see this, that whenever you want to analyze your performance from business, you should calculate some key ratios which will give us the indicator whether you have done well or whether you have not done well. Compare your performance with competitors. So the way you have calculated those key ratios for your business, similarly you can also calculate those key ratios for your competitors, and you can compare that if my net profit is 5% and my competitor net profit is 10%, that means my performance is not good as compared to my competitors. So then you can go for finding out the root cause, right? Why it has happened, why my profitability is 5% less than my competitor, right? Compare your performance with industry benchmark, right? This is also very important, that how your industry is doing. What are the industry benchmark? If the industry benchmark is 15% net profit, and if you are earning only 5%, means you are 10% below your industry benchmark. Why it has happened? Whether your costs are more, whether your efficiency is poor, whether your workers are not performing well, right? Whether they are not working efficiently. All these aspects will have to be looked into. Whether your turnover is lower, because of that your profitability is low. All these aspects you will have to you will be able to analyze when you will review your profit and loss statement in this manner. Now we are going to analyze the profit and loss statement which we have just seen, right? So I will just shuffle between these two. So typically, as we can see, our turnover for last year was 2 crore 39 lakhs 82,000, and this year it was 5 crore 53 lakh 18,000. So that means we have registered a 130% growth in turnover, right? Which is very good. If we look at the net profit, what was the net profit? It was 4 crore 77 lakhs last year, which had jumped to 14 lakhs 3,947. So there is increase almost by 11 lakhs in my net profit. Whether we have done really well, right? Apparently we see that we have really done well. We have increased our turnover. We have also managed to increase our profit. So now here we have put some ratios on paper. So one is my net profit ratio, which 3.50 vis-a-vis turnover of 2 crore 39 lakhs. So in terms of percentage, it was 1.46%, and it was in 18-19 2.67%. So it has grown by almost 1.2% compared to last year. Similarly, if we look at profit after tax, so these are these two: before tax profit and after tax profit. So here that comparison has been done. So before tax profit percentage has grown by 1.2%. After tax profit percentage has grown by 0.5%. So primary, we can see that business has done well. Now let's go deep, right? Now, what is the next step? What is our main cost driver? Our main cost driver here is our raw material consumption. So now, sorry. Next, first we will calculate EBITDA, right? As I already discussed, EBITDA is the operating profit, which is looked at by any investor also. So as I already explained, what is EBITDA? That is our net profit. We add back the interest which we have paid to bank. We add back the tax which we have paid to government, and we also add back the depreciation. Why? Because it is a notional expenditure. It has not actually expended from our pocket. It's just a notional expenditure. So we add back all these three and we arrive at operating profit. Now let's see the calculations, right? 17-18 profit before tax was 3.5 lakhs. 18-19 14.75. We added back both the years interest, we added back both the years depreciation, and we arrive at the EBITDA margin, earning before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization margin, and we divided it by sales. Now you can see the difference. Now here you will suddenly start feeling, no, there is something wrong. Primarily we felt that we have really done well. Compared to 17-18, my turnover is increased by 130%. In 18-19, my profitability has increased in absolute terms as well as in terms of percentage. But now when I have arrived at EBITDA, I can see that my EBITDA margin has dropped, right? Can you see? My EBITDA margin in 17-18 was 20.57%, and now it has dropped to 10.61%, right? In 18-19, my EBITDA margin has dropped by almost 10%. So there is some issue, right? When I calculated net profit, I can see my net profit has gone up. My net profit percentage has also gone up. But when now I am calculating my operating profit, the profit which is generated by my operations, my internal operations of my business, I can see that there is reduction of 10%. Now there is some trigger point, right? There is some issue, there is some problem. Primarily I can see my business is doing well, but when I'm doing this ratio analysis, when I'm reviewing my financial statements properly, I can see that there is some problem. Now again, let's briefly run through. When you just have a glance, what you feel? You feel, अरे this company has done well यार. टर्नओवर सिर्फ 2 करोड़ 39 था, एकदम 5 करोड़ 53 हो गया. प्रॉफिट भी 4 करोड़ 77 था, 14 lakhs हो गया. ऑलमोस्ट ये डबल से भी ज्यादा हो गया. So then I'm doing well, right? But then when I'm doing these calculations, when I'm arriving at operating profit margin, what I can see, my operating profit margin is reduced by 10%, right? It has almost come down by 10%. Now let's analyze why it has happened. Why my EBITDA margin has gone down. There is some issue. So now what I will do, I will turn to my cost driver. So what is my first major cost driver? Now I am also, so after EBITDA, what I am doing now, I am calculating my GP margin, gross profit margin. Now let's see why my EBITDA margin has gone down. So I am going one step ahead. I am doing now gross profit calculation. So as I discussed, what is gross profit? Sales minus my direct expenses. So material consumed and other direct expenses. So I am arriving at gross profit. If I look at my gross profit performance, again here the same issue. The gross profit margin for 17-18 is 35.20%. And in 18-19, it is only 21.12%. So there is a 14% drop. Though my turnover increased, though my net profit increased, but my gross profit has gone down. Means there is some serious issue with my business operations. There is some serious issue at my shop floor. There is some serious issue with either labor, with either material, or with overall manufacturing process. Because of which what has happened? Though my turnover is increased, though my sales is increased, still my profitability has gone down, right? So now I go further deep in analysis. Now what I'm doing, I'm also going to see what is my material consumption ratio, right? Just 1 minute. I am just taking a water. So now I have come to analyze my main cost driver. What is my main cost driver? My material consumption, raw material consumption, which I am using to manufacture the auto components. When I do a ratio analysis that my material consumed divided by my sales, what I can see, my material consumption ratio was 59.02%. What do you mean? How do you interpret it? That if my selling price is 100 rupees, my material cost was 59 rupees in 1718, but that material cost has gone up from 59 rupees to 73 rupees in 1890. Suddenly a jump of 14%, right? Why so? So now, try to understand. In this way, when you do the analysis, you come to know that where can be a problem in my business, right? Now, after calculating my material consumption, I will ask my production head, I will immediately call for meeting. I will call my production head and show this to him, that what's the problem, what happened. Though turnover has gone up, the profitability is deep. Why? Because your material consumption has gone up by 14%. What's the reason? And then the analysis will start further. The production head will go to shop floor. He will run through all your bin cards and then the production schedules. And then we will may come to know that there are multiple reasons. What could be the reason? One is that there is some rejection by the customer, so we have to rework, or there may be some improper handling of material. So what has happened, we have to throw a lot of material and then put a new lot for the order. Or there could be one reason that the raw material price has gone up. Like typically, if you look at the present scenario, the steel prices have gone up so drastically that naturally your raw material consumption and the ratio has also gone up. But this you will come to know when you will do the analysis of your financial statement in this manner, right? When you will calculate such key ratios, then only all these issues will surface out. But if you look at just broadly the way we looked at initially, what you feel primarily, no, the business has done well, yeah, turnover has gone up, profitability has gone up. But when you do such analysis, when you calculate such key ratios, then only all these issues will surface out, right? The way we calculated various margins, now we can see that there is some issue at operational level, there is some issue at material consumption. Now reason could be different. There could be genuine reason, there could be non-acceptable reasons, but that you will come to know only when you will have such initial analysis done and you go deep further to analyze the reasons for this, right? So as I mentioned here, so the 14% increase in raw material consumption could be either material wastage, either there could be a rejection of a whole lot from the customer, and typically we have again rework on that, or one chance could be there is a tremendous increase in the raw material price because of which this material consumption ratio has gone up. But unless and until you do this analysis, you will not come to know. Okay, so typically this is how you should do analysis of various major cost indicators. So typically, if you are into a service industry, if you are running a IT or software company, what will be a main cost driver for you? For you, it will be a salary, right? Because for any software company or service industry, their experts, their skilled professionals is a major cost driver. So you typically in IT company, they also have a concept of bench cost, right? They have to maintain a bench cost because they never know when a new project will come up. And at that time, if they go for hiring, they may not get a good candidate. So all IT companies maintain some bench cost. So all these costs are your main cost drivers. So you can always analyze that what is that cost driver percentage vis-a-vis my turnover or my sales, what I have achieved. And you can always compare that ratio with your competitors, with your industry, and then take a call whether I'm maintaining a ideal bench cost or whether I'm maintaining a higher bench cost, right? So similarly, in case of manufacturing, you can do such analysis for your wages, for your electricity expenses, especially if your manufacturing activity is consuming a lot of power, lot of fuel. You can do analysis of that particular electricity expenses. Now, just to give you a practical example, one of our client, they are using various furnaces. They are into heat treatment. So there we are doing a detailed analysis of electricity consumption, because typically what happens, the furnace has to be heat at to a certain degree, right? So it consumes a lot of power to heat that particular furnace to a certain level, and once that level is achieved, then that the temperature is maintained if you continuously use that furnace. But if you don't use that furnace, if you again keep that furnace idle for 1 or 2 hours, the temperature comes down, and again if to bring that temperature back, it consumes lot of power. So we analyze that particular aspect also in one of our clients, to identify that there is a issue at shop floor. They are not scheduling their orders at the furnace at a proper juncture, because of which the furnace temperature is going down and we are unnecessarily consuming extra electricity, right? So to that extent we have gone. So on case to case basis, business to business, this analysis may change, but this analysis is really required, because ultimately why we are doing business? To earn profit. And if we can control our cost, if we can control our expenditure, ultimately it is going to add to our profit. So so this is a typical discussion on one of the financial statement, profit and loss statement, which is a key statement which indicates how well you have done during a particular period. So you can always prepare profit and loss statement for a month, for 3 months, for 6 months. For regulatory compliance purposes, we prepare it for a calendar year, right? So I think we will close our discussion today here. So typically we cover business plan, the basics of business plan, what are the key ingredients of business plan, how to prepare a robust business plan, and then we started with financial statements, and we dealt with one of the key financial statement, profit and loss. Next session we are going to deal with balance sheet, cash flow, and typically what are the various startup registrations available. Startup can be registered under which norm, and what is the ideal entity the startup should go for. All these discussions we will have in next session. Yeah, Yogesh. So
Great, Prasanna.
yeah.
Yes. Audience, if you have any question, you can raise your hand or you can put it in the chat box. Yes, Aslam, you can go ahead. Hello, Aslam, you can unmute yourself.
I think somebody has written whether they can get a PDF. Yes, certainly I will share the PDF. I'm also going to share this sample profit and loss balance sheet also with you. And I will definitely recommend that maybe before our next session, you can actually go through any balance sheet, whatever of your business or any other balance sheet, because that will give you a lot of inputs. Maybe you can come up with a lot of questions. And since today we have done an excellent discussion on profit and loss, you will be able to analyze any other profit and loss statement well, and maybe you can have a lot of questions also which we can address in next session.
Great, Prasanna. Aslam, you can go ahead. You can ask your question.
Thank you, sir, for giving me the opportunity. So the seminar was very good and lots of doubts were clear, but I still have one doubt related to risk assessment. In the slide you told about risk assessment, but what are the approaches to mitigate that particular risk? Can we get detailed elaboration on that particular risk mitigation part?
Fine. So see, typically now business to business or product to product, industry to industry, the risk may change, right? So the example which I have taken right now, let's say we take automobile industry. So the industry itself is going through a sea change, right? Slowly we are moving from a traditional fuel-based vehicles to electric vehicles, right? So the risk is totally different. The risk is whether we will survive or not, right? That is the first risk. Or if we want to survive, what change we need to bring in our business. So typically based on that, you will have to analyze your risk factors. To be very frank, it's very subjective and case specific. Risk management is a very big area, and based on the business, based on the nature of activity, product, it will change. So the risk could be market risk, your technology obsolescence risk. If you are doing export business, it's an exchange fluctuation risk. So just to give you a 2 years back example, one of our customers, they bought a machinery from China and they did not go for hedging. They thought they wanted to make a payment in US dollars, and we enter into buyer's credit, but it did not go for hedging. And exchange, the USD has increased almost by 20%. So when they had to make payment against that buyer's credit, they were in a fix, right? So these are all scenarios which we have to anticipate, analyze, and work upon it. So it's totally case to case basis. You need to understand all the risks for your business, and you should work upon it. If you identify the risk, then only you can start thinking about how to address that, how to mitigate that, what are the compensating controls which you can put up, right? So I think still, if you have any specific question, maybe we can address it. But in general, if we really talk about risk management, these are all various aspects which you need to look into.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Aslam, for asking the question. Next question is, project reports are required for all startups or not?
Yes, project report is definitely required. Typically, as I mentioned, whenever you want to approach for funding, even be it banks or be it private investor, angel investors, venture capital, you have to prepare a project report, because you have to show them a picture, right? Whatever concept, whatever idea, what you are going to commercialize, whether that is really going to work, you will have to present it. And ideally that project report has to be robust. It's not just a paper presentation wherein you are claiming that from day one or from year one my monthly turnover is 1 CR, unless you have a supporting document, supporting orders, which is authenticating that yes, you will achieve a turnover of 1 CR, right? So this is one example. So typically you will have to have a project report which is backed by facts and figures. Yeah. What are the key points to connect
you can go ahead.
for a new startup? No, I'm not able to get this question. Can you just unmute and ask? This electrical engineer, I'm not able to really understand your question. What are the key points to connect with people for a new startup? Can you just elaborate it?
Maybe it's like his mic is not open. So we can take Praveen. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi, Prasanna. It was a good presentation. I have 2 questions.
Sure.
One is related to valuation, because you said that investors normally look for EBITDA, right? Whenever they are looking for investment.
Yes.
So in case I'm into service industry, what valuation I should look at? Because considering I am having small startup, and their EBITDA numbers are good, and it's a profitable business. But I'm not able to understand how I should evaluate my startup. So what should be the base for it, and how I can go ahead with that?
Now, if you really look at it, valuation is a very crazy game. We all have witnessed this, right? The way we see the investment flowing in Flipkart and in Amazon. If we go by the fundamentals, if we look at their financials, they all are into losses, right? So typically, the traditional way of doing valuation, business valuation, is based on the past track record, the profitability, the assets you own, the goodwill which you enjoy in the market, the name which you enjoy. So generally valuations are dependent on that. But again, as I mentioned, industry to industry, the parameters change, right? So whenever we talk about all these e-platforms or e-commerce portals, we can see they have a crazy valuations. Why? Because their valuations are dependent on GMV, right? Gross merchandising value. What is a business, online business share they enjoy or they earn? Their valuations are dependent on that. So typically, that's why if you look at valuation, it's again a industry specific mechanism, or the way the valuation is done is dependent on your industry in which you are operating. Uh, there are valuation methods, of course. You can always go to a certified valuer. There are various scientific methods which are laid down, which are used to do the valuations. But finally, what we have seen, because we have dealt with couple of such private equity investment, and I have participated in some private equity investment meetings. Though you put in a lot of things on paper, ultimately it's on a gut feeling. To be very frank and open with you, generally it's on the gut feeling of the investor that typically the concept is whether it is really going to flourish. Typically let's take example, when Ola started, whether we all thought that it will really grow in such a big way. No, because at that time we felt, no, this is a new concept, who will adopt it or who will go for it, right? But then now we can see all these cab aggregators, they are doing good, they are getting good valuations. Now they are coming up with their own IPOs, right? So it all depends on what is a philosophy of the investor, how effectively you explain the concept, how effectively you communicate that this particular concept is going to grow, it has scalability. And typically in case of startup, what we have observed is how long this concept is going to survive and how long you will be able to sustain the competition. I think that will also play a key role in getting a good valuation. Because generally in IT industry or software industry, what we have seen, it has got a very a small shelf life, right? So whether in 3 to 5 years you will be able to exploit that, if not, then it will be difficult for you to really generate that valuation and pay to your investor, right? So again, just to conclude, or to specifically answer your question, your valuation will be dependent on your assumptions, testing those assumptions, that whether they are really workable, and what are the various uh, risk factors you have considered, whether as we discussed already, that SWOT analysis, how effectively you have done, and ultimately the mindset of the investor. It will depend on that, and of course you will have to back it by the proper valuations done using the scientific valuation methods. But ultimately, when it comes to negotiating terms and signing the term sheet, it all is about it all depends about the negotiation skills, and ultimately the investor mindset and his guess. Ultimately it's a guesswork, to be very frank with you. Though you put everything on paper, though you put lot of calculations, supporting documents, ultimately whether the investor is convinced at that particular time to go ahead, the deal gets clicked, otherwise the deal won't get clicked. Yeah.
Great.
For our startup related queries. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe Yogesh, you can share my connect, and definitely one-to-one basis we can connect with the participants.
Yeah, of course. We already made a WhatsApp group. If you want to connect with Prasanna, you can directly put the message there. Otherwise, you can mail me. I will share the contact detail of Prasanna.
Sure. There is a question. Can you share some light on taxation? Definitely, we are going to discuss about the startup registration, its taxation angles in our subsequent sessions. So we will deal with that in detail.
Yeah.
Okay. So great, Prasanna. We are running out of time. So I would like to call Rohit Avdi, CEO of Magic, to give some say some words. Hey, Rohit.
Hey, thanks, Yogesh. Thanks, Prasanna. And most importantly, thanks to everyone who joined with such great questions. In fact, with the question that came today, I was just wondering if I need to brush up my personal skills as well. So Prasanna, being part of this audience and thinking myself as a startup, I had a very basic question,
Okay.
especially when you talk about depreciation, when somebody buys machinery or any capital expenditure. Does this also apply to the smaller things that we buy, like say a mobile device or say laptops or printers? Does it apply to that as well, or that is dealt with differently?
Yeah, certainly. So, yes, definitely, a laptop. Generally, what happens to mobile? The principle is that whatever item you are purchasing, if it is having more than 1 year useful life, you capitalize that in your books, and then you start claiming depreciation. This is a basic principle which we follow. So typically, plant and machinery may be having useful life of 10 years, 15 years. So accordingly, there are different depreciation rates which are prescribed under Companies Act, different rates which are prescribed under Income Tax Act. If you look at the factory building, it is having more life of say 25 years, 30 years. So if you look at the rates which are prescribed, those are lower than the rates for plant and machinery. And if you look at software, laptop, computer, the rates prescribed are much high because they are having very less useful life. So again, so within a framework of accounting standards which are provided by our Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, you can either capitalize your mobile. So just take an example of mobile. So I am having iPhone say of 1 lakh. Now it's a decision I can take that whether I want to capitalize it and claim depreciation, or whether I can do entire, or I can expense it out in 1 year itself. But when it comes to higher assets, we do capitalize it and provide for depreciation as per the depreciation rates which are prescribed. So typically in case of laptop, software, other infrastructure like printers, scanners, they are capitalized. They are having very high depreciation rates. So in case of laptop software in Companies Act, it's 40%. In Income Tax Act, it's 60%. So almost in 2 years, you claim the entire amount as depreciation and expenses out. Otherwise, as I mentioned, you can directly expense it out in the year itself when you have purchased it. So that methodology you can adopt, and accordingly you have to mention in your financial statement that this methodology I have adopted.
Got it. Because in today's startup or innovation-centric world, I think laptops and mobiles are probably the first purchases that any startup is going to do.
Right.
So it is going to be very important how we account for that, because as you said in the beginning itself, with all the VCs and angel investors I have interacted with so far, unless our papers are up to date, the whole funding cycle itself takes a very long time.
True.
So while it's a tough and sometimes boring topic, it is what the whole game is about.
Right,
Right?
absolutely.
The books need to be really well kept.
Yeah, right. True.
So great, we are at the end. Prasanna, that was a wonderful session and it was very informative, and I am looking forward to have an advanced session next month. Thank you everyone for joining, and I'm looking forward to meet you in the next session. Okay, goodbye everyone.
Thank you everybody.